Child 10 thinks he saves dog. When he sees what it is, he turns pale. James is walking back home from school when he suddenly sees this dog struggling in the river. He knows he has to help him. Quickly, James runs towards the dog and pulls him out of the river. When James puts the dog back on the ground, the dog refuses to move anywhere. James could not figure out what was wrong, but something shocking was about to happen. James notices strange stains covered around the belly of the dog. He is unsure what happened to the dog, but it does not look good. James takes the dog home and tries to clean the dog but can't remove the stains. When his parents see the dog, they immediately bring him to the vet. The vet immediately sees that this dog isn't like any others. Something is terribly wrong with this dog, and the vet couldn't figure out what. He has never seen anything like this before. He decides to do some examinations on the dog. What could it possibly be? After long examinations, the results finally came back. The vet already knew it wouldn't be good, given how the dog looked. He logs into the computer, looks at the results, and turns pale. It was something he had never seen before, and he immediately called the police. James was so confused. Why did the vet call the police? Could something happen to him? So many questions went through James's head. While the police were on their way, the vet asked James how he found the dog. James said that he was walking home from school when he heard some strange sounds. The sounds came from this river nearby. He knew it sounded like someone needed help. James decided to take a closer look at where he heard the sound coming from. When he closed up on the river, he saw a dog trapped in the branches of the river. The poor dog could not get out of it. James did not hesitate and decided to take action. James saw this harmless dog panic as he almost drew himself. James did not have to think twice, as he immediately jumped into the river to rescue the dog. While he was in the river, he noticed that it would not be easy to free the dog. The dog was completely stuck in the branches. After a lot of trying, James finally gets the dog loose. He pulled the dog out of the river. The poor dog was exhausted. When he put the dog on the ground, it refused to walk. Then James saw something very shocking. When James and the dog were out of the water, James immediately noticed some weird stains on the dog's belly. He had never seen a dog with these strange stains before, so he decided to help this harmless dog. James took the dog with him to his home. Once James arrived home, he thought he might get the stains off by cleaning him. But after cleaning the dog, the stains would not have disappeared. James did not know what could possibly be happening, so he decided to search for answers on the internet. James was suddenly disturbed when his parents came home. They saw the dog lying in his bed, and it did not look good at all. They became very angry with James for bringing a dog in that condition into the house. The dog was not welcome in their parents' house. James' parents were not happy with this situation in their home. They didn't want a filthy dog with obvious serious illnesses or whatsoever. They just didn't want him in the house. James felt helpless because he couldn't just put the dog back on the street in this state. James started to beg his parents to help the poor dog. He explained that he found the dog all stuck in the branches of the river and nobody was helping him. The parents saw how much James cared about the dog and finally gave in and decided to help James. James and his parents both went searching on the internet but couldn't find anything on the internet similar to what the dog had. James kept insisting on helping the dog. James' father, Rick, therefore, decided to take him to the vet so he could take a look. They went to the vet at high speed, as the dog's condition worsened during the drive. They had to get there quickly because this dog needed to get help and be saved from his unbearable pain. Rick drove as fast as he could, ignoring possible fining tickets. They rushed to the vet. Once they arrived, the vet assistant told them that they had to make an appointment. Rick explained that the dog was in terrible condition and needed help right away. When the vet assistant saw the weird stains on the dog, she understood the urgency and called the vet. The vet came to pick up the dog and already saw that this dog needed immediate help. He asked James where this dog came from, and James explained where he found it. The vet didn't hesitate and grabbed his gear and began his tests on the dog. The vet has had a lot of experience after years of helping dogs, but he was shocked when he saw the strange stains on the dog's belly. In all these years, he had never seen something like this before. He told Rick that this could be something very bad. After doing several tests on the dog, he could not get any solid results about what could be wrong with him. The vet tells James and his parents that he has to do some special examinations on the dog to find out what this dog is suffering from. The vet took the dog to the lab to do some special examinations. After a while, the vet returned to James and his parents and told them the results should take a few days to return. When James wanted to pick up the dog, the vet told him the dog was not allowed to leave the lab. James and his parents were confused about why the dog was not allowed to come home, but accepted the vet's request. A few days later, Rick received a call from the vet. "You need to come down immediately. The results are back." Rick calls his wife Emma and tells her to pick up James from school. They had to go to the vet immediately. Emma became a little bit scared about why they all had to come down to the vet. When James and his parents arrived at the veterinary clinic, they immediately knew something was wrong here. They saw people walking in closed white suits, and the vet looked very severe. He said, "We have a serious problem." The vet asked several questions to James and his parents. The questions were quite weird. It was more about where he found the dog rather than the results of the test. The vet ended the questioning by saying that he needed to call the police if James didn't cooperate. James is telling the truth, however. The vet called the police, and once the police arrived, James needed to come to the police station for further questioning. James got terrified by the idea of being arrested. He did not understand what was happening to him. James's parents are crying and begging the police officers to not take him to the police station. What did he do wrong here? He is just a 10-year-old boy who found a dog and tried to help him. He shouldn't be arrested for doing a kind favor to the dog. Unfortunately, the begging and crying of James' parents didn't help, and James got arrested and was put in the police car. He looked his parents scared in the eyes when they were driving off. James' parents stood there helpless, watching their son being arrested. James had never been in a police car and was impressed by what it looked like, but he was especially scared of the feeling of being arrested. He started to ask all sorts of questions to the police officers about why he was being arrested, but he did not get any answers. Once at the police station, they treated James like a criminal. They were rude and pushed him into the interrogation room. No questions were asked, and people were angry looking at James. He then was sitting alone in a dark, creepy room. Then an officer came into the interrogation room and started asking James questions. He was mostly asking where he found the dog and what his connection was with it. James explained that he found him on the way back home from school and never saw the dog before. He has said this over 100 times now. The police were very aggressive in questioning. Then one of the officers noticed that James was very scared. The police decided to be open about the situation towards James because they no longer saw him as a suspect. When James heard the reason why the dog was in this critical state, he was shocked. Last few months, the police found a lot of dogs in the same condition as James, his dog. These dogs seem to have been fed certain substances that should make them better fighting dogs. However, these substances make the dog sick, and most of the time, they end up dead. To find out who was drugging these dogs, the police opened a case. This serious crime needed to be solved, but it turned out to be very challenging. After months of searching, they finally found their first clue. For months, the police were looking for the criminal organization that was responsible for the death and torture of these poor dogs. The police had a suspect in sight, Craig Johnson. Recent operations had led the police towards Craig Johnson, but this time they could the evidence to take action. The leader of the criminal organization was called Craig Johnson, aka Crazy Johnson. He was a well-known figure in the underworld. He was detained several times for various felonies. They feared him greatly in the streets of the city. The police strongly suspect that Craig Johnson and his gang are responsible for the dead dogs. Until now, the police had no evidence to know the whereabouts of the dogfighting and also no evidence to arrest the criminal organization of Craig Johnson. But James' dog might lead to a breakthrough, as it is the first dog who is alive. The extreme story of this Crazy Johnson shocked James. How could you treat these adorable dogs like this? Pure torture. James eventually came up with a plan, which surprised the officers because it wasn't actually that bad. They even decided to follow up on it. The police decided to provide the dog with a GPS tracker. The idea was to lead the dog in the hood of the criminal organization to lure out Crazy Johnson. He should take the dog back to the fight. The police would then be able to track the GPS tracker of the dog to the fighting event and catch them in the act. The plan was put into action, and the dog was given a GPS tracker before being dropped off near Cray Johnson Hood, where he was active. They hoped the dog would be noticed and be taken by one of Cray's entourage. The police waited a few hours, but nothing happened. But then, finally, they saw Cray heading outside. Immediately, Cray spotted the dog, and you could see the confusion on his face. Cray picked up the dog and took it inside. Now it was a waiting game. Would Cray take the dog with him to the fighting event? It took a while before the police saw some significant movement in the GPS tracker. It went to several locations, most of which appeared familiar to the police. But one location was in the middle of nowhere, which was quite suspicious. The police thought he would move on, but the GPS signal remained at the same place. 15 minutes later, the police decided to take action, as they suggested it might actually be the fight's location. The police were shocked when they came closer to the GPS location. The police arrived at the scene and discovered that there was no area where dogfights were taking place. However, they noticed Cray talking to someone else in a car with the dog. A deal appeared to be in progress. The police decided to take action. The police saw Cray was involved in a drug deal and decided to arrest him. Even though it was enough to put Cray away, there was more to it. The police were still keen to take down the whole criminal organization of Cray to prevent further deaths of the poor dogs in the city. Cray Johnson was put into an interrogation room so the police could start asking questions about the dog fighting event. At first, Cray did not see a reason to help the police, as he would never snitch on them. But when the police put pressure on Cray and told him how long he would sit in jail, he started to talk. Cray told the police he would only cooperate if he got a reduced sentence. The police have thought about this for a long time. They decide to agree to Cray's request to end the dogfighting. Cray told the police everything they should know to put an end to this nightmare. The team was being prepared by police for the raid on the dogfighting grounds as they lined up. The police had waited months for this, and everyone could not wait to handcuff these psycho criminals. The police cars are prepared and ready for the operation. In the end, they drove to 5 different locations, all at once. You can imagine that this is a largely scaled operation, which involved a lot of police officers. They took down 2 criminal organizations, and 56 people were sent to jail. But what about the dogs? During the operation, the police found 120 dogs. They all went to the vet in order to cure all of them. It would take the vet a lot of time to help all these dogs, but that was not an issue for him. The one from James got special attention because he was so crucial in this entire police investigation. A few days had gone by, and James had not heard anything from the police. They told his parents that it was normal procedure and that they would take it over from here. But today, the doorbell rang. James opened the door and saw the police standing there. The police wanted to tell James that they had caught the criminals responsible for all this and that they had a small surprise. It was the dog James found in the river. The vet healed the dog, and it was James's dog now. What did you think of this story? Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like the video and subscribe. See you next time.